Welcome back to the 4K Film Club, a banquet hall podcast. Today we're going to do something new, but of course the film club is new, so everything we do is new here. We're going to talk about two movies today. Ballerina, which is from the John Wick Universe and recently came out, and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which has been out for a few weeks now, but it is the latest installment of the Mission Impossible franchise. Two action movies that I quite enjoyed, both for different reasons. Before we get into the thick of the conversation, I'm going to do like a spoiler-free review just in case y'all haven't seen the movie yet and want to get just some quick thoughts about the movies before checking them out. But for those of y'all who have tuned into the movie, or if you decide to tune into the movie after listening to this, there will be a distinct break and then we'll get into the spoiler section. So to get started with the spoiler-free reviews of both movies, I'm going to be reading off of my review on Letterboxd. Once again, Letterboxd is an app for cinephiles, those who love movies and talking about movies. Highly encourage y'all if you're into film, make a Letterboxd profile, follow me at the fourth Kyler. After I see a movie, if I feel like it, I'll sit through the credits and write a review for the movie. At minimum, I usually give it some type of star rating. So if y'all have been looking for a way to review movies on your own, or if you want to create lists for movies, Letterboxd is not sponsoring this yet. But really enjoy the social media app. I deleted Twitter off my phone a few weeks ago, and honestly, I'd rather read Letterboxd reviews than tweets right now. Before I get into the first review, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the culture of Letterboxd reviews. I feel like you have a multitude of different types of people when it comes to Letterboxd review, and I haven't really stuck to a lane yet, but you have your person who gives a very earnest, honest review of the movie, multi-paragraphs or multi-sectional review. You have your one-liners, people who just say something witty, catchy, maybe a quote from the movie. Not to get that in-depth of an analysis, but just to give like a hot button take or a hot button thought about the movie. A lot of times those are very catchy, and if I'm debating on seeing a movie, if I haven't heard a lot about the movie, sometimes I'll open up the movie's Letterboxd and just review or read some of the spoiler-free reviews because they mark which reviews have spoilers, and just see what clever things people are saying about the movie and help dictate whether or not I want to see it. So yeah, for my Mission Impossible review, it's a little combination of your standard straightforward review. You need to know the reference to get the full art of the review. Open shot, fate of the universe on the line, where the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth and you better hit it. I want Ethan Hunt.
Of everyone on Golden State, open shot, fate of the universe on the line, or the Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth, you better hit it. I want Iguodala. Iguodala's got ice water in his veins. Iguodala is that type of player. High leverage moment, fate of the universe on the line. I want open shot, not go get it. I want Iguodala taking that shot for me.
The movie itself is a bumpy ride with a ton of exposition dumping, even grading it on a Mission Impossible scale. But the movie nails what we come to these movies for. Some breathtaking action set pieces and some miraculous pull-throughs. Has a lot of Andor energy too. I just wish they trusted the audience more to connect the dots. For those of y'all out there who haven't seen Star Wars, haven't seen Andor, Andor just a fantastic TV series, even if you're not a Star Wars fan. I think a lot of the themes for season 2 hit home a lot today. Today in a macro and a micro sense, just with all the political activism going on in the media. Definitely check out Andor. Highly recommend it, especially if y'all like Star Wars, especially if you've seen Rogue One. But back to Mission Impossible, to talk a little bit more about the movie without spoiling it. Last episode, Sinners Part 2, I talked a little bit about exposition dumping. When a piece of media, they just tell you a bunch of background knowledge, a bunch of facts that you need to know in order for the movie or the piece of media to work. When done well, sometimes it's hidden and not noticeable by audiences. In Mission Impossible's case, I feel like it was very heavy-handed to the point where before some of the more actiony parts of the movie, I was very disappointed with Mission Impossible. Like, I just wasn't having a good time. And going to the part of my review where I talked about wanting them to trust the audience more, when it comes to movies that have several sequels, your Fast and Furious movies, your Mission Impossibles, even the MCU to a slightly different extent, at some point, I don't want you to care about somebody who's watching the 9th movie as their first entry into the franchise. Granted, there are some movies where they do catch up people who haven't seen any other installment in the franchise pretty well. This one was not an example of that. I think they spent way too much time in the first hour, 90 minutes of the movie telling you what happened in the previous 8 movies. And I'm like, I seen them. And for your diehard fans, they probably binge watched a lot of them before coming to this movie. So to spend so much time in a not entertaining way telling me what happened in the other movies, you lost me, boss. If you're gonna lose me in the first half, though, you better nail the second half. And Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, they nailed the second half. I think they nail it to varying degrees depending on the audience, but being in that movie theater, full crowd, opening night, watching it in IMAX, there was a certain energy at the movies that has been lost a lot over recent years, especially post-pandemic or post the start of the pandemic. When I went to the movies to see Mission Impossible, it was packed. And this is not just a random theater, of course, it's the Montclair Place Theater in Montclair, California. But I've seen quite a few movies there since living in the IE, and I haven't seen it that packed. But so many people were out because I went on, I said May 22nd was when I wrote the review. So yeah, it was a Thursday night when I was watching Mission Impossible, and the theater was filled. But also people were there to see Lilo and Stitch. People were out at the movies. And recently someone asked if people still go to the movies that much. I was like, yeah, I think they do. I think that the media talks a lot about the decline of movies, but especially at least in Southern California, there's a lot of people who want to go to the movies. A, it's just expensive as hell. And B, they just want to be entertained. And when you have a property like Lilo and Stitch, which a lot of millennials, a lot of older Gen Z folks, younger millennials, they grew up on this movie. They love this movie. They want to see it. They might want to put their kids onto this movie. And then you have Mission Impossible, a very successful action franchise, having an installment that feels like the culmination of something. The way they advertise Mission Impossible is very similar to how they advertise Avengers Endgame, really selling you on how much of a story you've been on with these characters. And people wanted to see it, and people had a good time with it. Or at least I should say people in my audience seem to have a good time with it. I had a good time with the movie. Like I said, what you come to a Mission Impossible movie for, they nail it. They nail the stunts. They nail the set pieces. I think it really comes down to how much you buy Ethan Hunt as a character, how much you buy the concept of Ethan Hunt. It's called Mission Impossible for a reason. And if you think Ethan Hunt can do the impossible, I think you'll like the movie. Now getting to Ballerina. Ballerina is a movie that I honestly was a lot less excited about and a lot less interested in. The trailers weren't that interesting to me. Granted, after I saw 1 or 2 trailers, I really stopped trying to pay attention to the trailers because once again, similar to Sinners, I wanted to go into the movie pretty blind and just be seated for whatever the filmmakers had in store for me. And I have to say, out of all the movies I've seen this year, Ballerina is one of the more pleasant surprises. And it is a roller coaster of a ride of an action movie, which is what made it really the core inspiration for this episode of the podcast. But once again, the parts they needed to nail, they exceeded my expectations quite drastically with some of the action. Some of the connections to the greater John Wick universe and how this movie plays a role in the greater idea of John Wick. I think there is a lot of bumpy execution with that. But in terms of going to the movies and wanting to see an action movie, especially we're in June, it's the onset of the summer, it's summer blockbuster season. This was a good start to summer blockbuster season. Between Mission Impossible and Ballerina, you have 2 action movies that I like similarly, but for different reasons. If I had to recommend somebody to stop this podcast and just go see one of them, I would say Ballerina over Mission Impossible, even if you're a big Mission Impossible fan. And once again, I'll get into more of the details of that once we get into the spoiler section of the episode. But overall, sometimes you just need a fun time at the movies, and I think Ballerina and Mission Impossible nail that. Similar to Mission Impossible, got to make sure to include the Letterboxd review for Ballerina. This one's a little bit fresher in my mind because I just watched this on June 4th, recording this on June 9th, and realistically, I really wanted to record it same night. One day we'll get to the point where I'm coming home straight from the movies and recording, but this is not my full-time job yet. I gotta get some rest because I gotta go to work in the morning. I gotta go to work in the morning tonight, but it's early enough to where I have the energy to bring y'all great content. Once again, make sure y'all like, subscribe, follow at Banquet Hall Pod. But let's get into my letterbox review of Ballerina. One that, quite frankly, I did spend a little bit more time on than I usually do with these reviews, just because this movie had me feeling a lot of different things related to my overall assessment of the movie. I'll just say the actual star review, I'll have it on the actual video of the podcast. But for Mission Impossible on Letterboxd, I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. And for Ballerina, my 4-star review of it, I need Eve in Mortal Kombat. At its peaks, Ballerina has some of the best action sequences and holy shit moments that make it undeniable as a great action movie. If you can see it in Dolby, please run and do so because the sound of this movie felt amazing. The threads connecting it all together, interesting enough to hold you over to the next action, but overall it takes me out of the movie each time. Luckily though, the action is great enough to lure back in. I do wish that John Wick wasn't in the trailer and that they just let Eve cook in her own movie, but I get it. I just found myself being distracted from her story and wishing I had more John Wick action. Overall, when the action delivers like it does in this, I'm willing to overlook a lot. I had a blast, and I hope you do too, with the crowd.
You are now entering the spoiler zone. Repeat, you are now entering the spoiler zone.
So as far as the spoiler section of the episode, I'm actually going to rewind and start with Mission Impossible again. And for starters, it has to be stated, I love the Mission Impossible franchise. If you're watching this on YouTube, Spotify, wherever, comment your favorite Mission Impossible movie. I feel like this is going to be one of those episodes where I actually ought to comment a bunch of things. So I'm going to judge a lot by how many comments are under this episode. And if y'all don't know, you can actually leave comments on Spotify now. So if you're listening on Spotify, there's video. Make sure y'all check that out. I love the Mission Impossible movies. If I had to pick my favorite, it would probably be Mission Impossible Fallout or the original. But I find these movies to be very entertaining. I think it was in preparation for Dead Reckoning, the movie that came out right before The Final Reckoning. But I finally went back and watched the Mission Impossible movies that I hadn't seen or hadn't remembered, and I just had a blast. When it comes to Mission Impossible, you know what you're going to those movies for. I alluded to it in the spoiler-free section, but let's be honest. You want to go to see Tom Cruise do some crazy shit. Whether it's hanging off the side of a plane, scaling the Burj Khalifa, holding his breath underwater, and starting once again with what I really like about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning are the stunts, the action set pieces. You see some of it in the trailers, but there's a sequence that starts with Ethan Hunt jumping from a helicopter into the ocean. He's in a submarine trying to escape. He sheds his scuba gear and tries to make it to the surface. And I'm hooked the whole time. I'm hooked the entire time. For this episode, the theme of it are some things that make action movies great, as well as some things that can really make an action movie fail. And starting with the Mission Impossible action set pieces, these are some things that, if you nail those things, it's a lot easier for me to forgive some of the things I may not like about the movie. But the beginning part of it was so exposition heavy that it was hard for me to give too favorable of a rating for the movie. And when I talk about exposition, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has some of the worst exposition dumps I've ever seen on screen. I mean, they might as well have just had Tom Cruise give a PowerPoint presentation on every stunt he did in a Mission Impossible movie. Because not only do they do the thing where they're talking at camera and they're telling you, oh, in Mission Impossible, I mean, obviously they didn't use the title of the movie, but more or less he was like, yeah, in Mission Impossible Fallout, I jumped out of a plane, I fought Henry Cavill. But the thing is, they also show clips from those old movies. So if you've never seen a Mission Impossible movie, you kind of get a PowerPoint presentation update on everything Ethan Hunt has done. And I'm not saying that movies can't do this and still be successful. Plenty of great action movies have a lot of exposition dump, but it's happening while action is going on, it's happening more creatively. And even within the Mission Impossible franchise, there's a lot better exposition dumps in the franchise to where I feel more a part of the story versus you just telling me a bunch of things and then we get to the story. I've listened to some podcasts say that you can literally get to the movies 90 minutes late and still have a great time with Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. And that's because the first part of the movie is so heavy on just telling you stuff about what Ethan Hunt's done. Some of it setting you up with all the intricacies of the story. And honestly, the plot of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is very wonky, very bumpy. A lot of things probably don't make sense. A lot of the things are going to make you go, is that accurate? Or it just sounds real fake. Or they break a lot of rules that they themselves create. It's messy at the beginning. I can't lie about that. But the moment that Ethan Hunt jumps into the ocean, the movie is vibrating at a frequency that's dope. There's great fight scenes. There's great action. The entire underwater set piece was mesmerizing. And obviously Tom Cruise's big things, he does all of his own stunts. So when you have that greater context, which is kind of a cheat code for the Mission Impossible movies, they get by with selling a lot of, hey, Tom Cruise did this, come check it out, which is part of the reason they're also some of my least favorite trailers to watch. Specifically with Dead Reckoning, the big stunt in that one was him, spoiler alert for Dead Reckoning if you haven't seen it, but is that he jumps this motorcycle off this cliff. They don't show the entire set piece in the trailer, but they show it enough to where when they show the cliff in the movie, like, oh, well, he's gonna grab a motorcycle and drive off that cliff, which once again, it's okay, but I love being immersed in a story. And I want to figure out myself that he's going to do that, or I want to see it happen in the movie for the first time. Don't really want to see it in the trailer, which in this movie comes up with the final action set piece in the movie when Ethan Hunt is climbing on a biplane and they're fighting on a biplane. Well, he's flying a plane up and then hops onto the other plane. All of this is really exciting action. It's like, how did they shoot this? But it was also shown in the trailer. And look, y'all, I get it. You have to sell a movie, you have to market a movie, you have to show something to entice people. But I don't want to see like the main things of the movie in your trailer. Overall, though, I'm keeping the Mission Impossible thoughts light because once again, it's a Mission Impossible movie. You're going to come into these movies expecting certain things and hopefully get those things out of the movie. For the most part, The Final Reckoning did enough to where my disbelief was suspended. I was locked in. Like I said, when the action was going, it was a great ride, but it was just so much exposition at the beginning of the movie that I had to rank it a little lower as far as movies I've seen this year. And it's not one of my favorite Mission Impossible movies. Still a good time at the movies, but overall, definitely felt a little disappointed in what I saw. Now, let's talk about Ballerina, a movie that I'm much more excited to talk about. If you would have asked me before both movies came out, I think that I would be much more likely to center a podcast around Mission Impossible than Ballerina because, like I said, from the trailer, from the concept, I just didn't know that I needed another John Wick installment in the franchise. And when Ballerina came out, or when the trailer was first released, I didn't know too much about the movie. And I used that to my advantage because I was like, all right, I don't know a lot about the movie. Let me try to keep that at a minimal level. But once again, I go to the movies a lot, and this is why I try to get to the movies after the trailers have run, or at least towards the last trailer. Try to be on my phone during trailers, just trying to actively deprogram my brain from the trailer. And one of the earlier trailers for Ballerina movie, you see John Wick on the screen. And I'm like, wait, didn't he die or something in one of the movies? And this is before I knew that, and for those who don't know, Ballerina takes place between John Wick Chapter 3 and John Wick 4. But before I even knew that, I was like, I wish I didn't know John Wick was in the movie. I really wish I didn't know. Because getting back to the review of the movie, I really enjoy Ballerina a lot more than I expected to enjoy it. And part of it was because I was sold on Eve, the protagonist. I was sold on her as a badass in the John Wick universe. And I was so immersed in her story that I was enjoying going along for the ride with her. And if you're going to have John Wick do a cameo, how dope would it be if I had no idea the cameo was coming? Obviously, if you're in the John Wick universe, and if you know that it happens before the events of John Wick 4, you might expect a cameo, but even then, to be shown it ahead of time ruins the moment. Because there's a difference between expectations versus knowing. Big spoiler for Spider-Man No Way Home, if by some chance, if you like those movies and by some chance haven't seen it or don't know what happens in those movies, fast forward to the timestamp I'm gonna put on the screen, just so that you don't have that spoiled for you, but hopefully you've seen Spider-Man No Way Home.
You are now entering the spoiler zone.
Part of the spectacle around Spider-Man No Way Home was rumors that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were in the movie. And I use rumors loosely. There was leaks, there was images. So unless you were just really skeptical of what you were reviewing and thought people were just fan casting or spreading rumors, it was kind of hard not to figure that they were going to be in the movie at some point. But if you didn't know, you got a fantastic surprise because they didn't include it in any of the promo material before the movie was released. And once again, even though everything in my brain was telling me that they were going to be in the movie, the fact that I didn't see it made the moment they showed up in the movie that much better. With Ballerina, it goes a step further though, because not only did they show John Wick in the original trailer, but I think, and this is me just speculating, I don't know this for a fact, but it is informed speculation based off of listening to a lot of movie podcasts, and I could have passively heard this confirmed, but John Wick was only supposed to be a cameo in the movie, or at least that's what it felt like. But then there are reshoots of the movie that led to John Wick having a much bigger part in the movie. And once again, especially if you're going to include him in more of the movie, I really don't want to see it in the trailer. Which leads to some of the thoughts on things that didn't work so well for me in the movie before I get into what works really well. And granted, take all of this with the fact that I didn't pay a lot of attention to trailers, so whatever they did want you to know ahead of time, I just didn't pay that much attention to. And so the movie starts out a little slow, just building the backstory of Eve, the protagonist of Ballerina. But I will say that even though I wasn't really there for it, even if it didn't land for me, I do think the movie was still a better framing device than they used in Mission Impossible in terms of catching you up to speed with where you need to be. We learn how she loses her father. I think initially it felt a little weird because I was coming to this movie thinking it was all about Eve, which the movie is more or less, but it felt like they were centering her dad a lot in the opening scene to where part of me wishes that the movie just opened with Eve as the badass that she is for most of the movie, but I understand wanting to set the tone and frame it with her backstory. But for part of me, part of me wishes that they would have gone the flashback route as opposed to starting the movie with young Eve, just because I found myself thinking about what was happening a lot more than enjoying what was happening. And there's some decent action in that opening set piece, but it just took me a while to buy on to who the character was. I think they were very, very heavy-handed with the ballerina symbolism throughout the first 10 to 15 minutes of the movie, which I mean is part of her character building, of course, but I'm like, y'all have this ballerina figurine in here a lot. It's center frame, it's zoomed in, like I get it. I'm watching the ballerina. Let's move on. A lot of this too is setting the scene, going through the act structure of a story, letting you know what the stakes are, letting you know what the character wants. I get all of it, but I think the beginning didn't hook me enough to where I was really caring that much about the story. Like I understood what was going on. I understood some of the characters' motivations, but I just didn't care that much. Granted, there are some good moments within that, but a lot of them kind of feel a little bit more cliche. They're establishing that she's a badass. And if y'all ever notice, a lot of action movies where the lead is a woman, they can sometimes spend a lot of time establishing like, oh, she's actually a badass or she's as strong as a man. And there's some movies that do it well to where it doesn't feel as cliche. I think there are moments of this I was like, I get it, she's strong. But for me, just understanding that she's an assassin in the John Wick universe, I kind of just assume she's a badass. So once again, let's get to it. And that's where the movie rocks. Once they get to it, I'm like, oh, like, all right, I'm locked in. Y'all got me. All right, I'll sit here and shut up for whatever y'all got to do, because if the action looking like this, y'all got me. And I think it starts with the scene. I forget exactly what type of establishment and building. It's like a bar or somewhere where a party or some type of function is happening. But she goes up the elevator, kills a bunch of dudes. You see a lot of the carnage or the aftermath of the carnage. She comes down the elevator. They don't know what she's done upstairs. They don't know she's even who she is. And then she goes out, gets to the car. You see that she just hit somebody with the car when she got there, pulls out, and then all of a sudden you see this car crash into her. Dude shooting at her out of nowhere. she's breaking his arm, and it's like, oh, we're going, like the movie's starting, the movie's here. And that set piece, I was like, oh, this is brutal, this is exhilarating, this is exciting, there's a lot of different things happening. And I'm like, okay, like y'all got me. And getting back to some of the things that make great action movies great, when you really sell me on really good action, I don't give a fuck how dumb the story is. That's what makes the best, and I use this slightly, that's something that separates the best of the worst in a lot of franchises. You look at movies like Fast and Furious, there's a lot of dumb shit that happens in the Fast and Furious, but if y'all like wow me, if y'all entertain me enough, I don't care how dumb it sounds. So there's that set piece with the car crash, but later on in the movie, there's one of probably, I'm willing to say, one of my top, at least top 10, maybe top 5 action set pieces I've ever seen in a movie. It starts when she enters an armory, Eve enters an armory. We're greeted by this black character. I forget his name. Apologies for the podcast, but they get bone rushed by the antagonist. They get bone rushed by the antagonist of the movie, and it's just nonstop action. And some of the ways that Eve kills some of these dudes that's ambushing them in the armory, I'm like, yo, I didn't know that y'all could do that. Or even if I knew y'all could do that, I've just never seen it before. There's one kill in particular where she bursts through this big metal door, throws a grenade behind the door, and like closes the dude behind the door, and he blows up, and you see blood splattering. What makes Ballerina so entertaining for me, there's just so many moments in it where I'm like, oh shit. I'm doing one of these, or like I'm leaning in, I'm like, oh. And as y'all are listening to this, I want y'all to comment like another one of those scenes in one of your favorite action movies where you're just like, oh shit, they did it. Like, I'm talking your Dark Knights when they flip in the truck. I'm talking Say Hello to My Little Friend. It's what the best action movies have. The best action movies always have those oh shit moments. Those moments where you're so just locked in. These are those popcorn movies where you're just throwing popcorn into your mouth because you're like, yo, this is active. I alluded to one of my favorite movies of all time in the first episode of the Film Club, Transformers, and I think that's another example. Mileage may vary, but of a great action movie where it's like, yeah, Autobots, Decepticons, whatever the fuck. Did you see Optimus Prime transform on a freeway and hit the bad robot with the sword fist? That's the type of shit we go to the movies for. I don't give a damn if it makes sense. Anytime I talk to somebody about an action flick that is genuinely, objectively great action, and they're like, well, the plot I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't. Like, when you have good action, I don't care. And once again, getting into general thoughts about Ballerina, a lot of the parts of the movie I don't like, the connective tissue of it didn't really work for me, but they sold me on the action. They did what they needed to do. I was convinced that Eve was a badass. She was killing the fuck out of these people. The action scenes that she's in, fantastic. And I didn't even think of the flamethrower scene. Oh my goodness. In my review, I mentioned if you can see the movie in Dolby, please do. This episode should come off early enough to where if you haven't seen Ballerina in Dolby, it's worth seeing in Dolby Vision. If you have AMC A-List, if you have a Dolby Vision theater, one of those premium format screens, just because the sound mixing in this movie is fantastic. And I think it's something that the John Wick movies do really well, where just the gunshots, the explosions, it's so badass. But the moment where they grab the flamethrower, John Wick 4 does this. I think it's John Wick 4. It might be 3, but I'm pretty sure it's 4. But they have this overhead shot where it feels like a video game and John Wick's going through with his guns and killing everybody, and we get this aerial view. They do it again with the flamethrower. I almost didn't like it because I'm like, oh, y'all just doing the thing that we like from the other movie. But seeing the flamethrower, seeing her fight back with a water hose, is cinema, man. And when you see a movie in Dolby, I promise Dolby ain't paying me, but it's just such a great way to watch a movie because just the visual, like, I was like, oh, this is what they made Dolby Vision for. All that being said, like I said, the connective tissue didn't work. And one of the big things that didn't work within the connective tissue of the movie were the John Wick parts. And This is something that I heard phrased on a podcast really well. I think it was in relation to Furiosa compared to Mad Max Fury Road. And they said the worst thing that you can do in an action movie, well, really in any movie, they probably said, but the worst thing you can do is make me wish I was watching another movie. And John Wick is in Ballerina so much that there are times when John Wick will be on the screen doing something for like 2 minutes. And I'm like, damn, I kind of want to see John Wick get down. And that's not something you want out of your Ballerina movie. And going back to the first line of the review, I said I want Eve in Mortal Kombat because she is genuinely a badass like action movie star. Anna de Armas, who plays Eve, she's fantastic as lead for the movie. And a lot of people who don't like women as leads in action movies, some people would say misogynist. They don't think a woman can be an action movie lead, even though we have examples in history already. Yeah, Michelle Yeoh, you have Charlize Theron and Kill Bill, like it's been done before. But I just bought her as an action star in a John Wick movie. And I think that's hard to do for something you know is in the John Wick franchise because John Wick is such a beloved character. He's the boogeyman, he's a Baba Yaga. So when you have this mythology of a character and you're kind of teased with them in a movie, it's like, like I do like Eve, but you show me so much John Wick. I kind of wish I was watching John Wick now. Or just a buddy movie where he's in more of the movie. It's kind of like you either have to have more or less. I would have rather had, in a perfect world, there's a very brief John Wick cameo. I actually think that this scene when he's first introduced into the movie works really well in a universe where I don't know he's in the movie at all. I think it's a great way to have this gargantuan of a character of John Wick in your movie without overshadowing the protagonist of the movie, but you still feel the weight of who John Wick is. And if you haven't seen the John Wick movies, you have an idea based on how characters interact with him. But once he's a part of the climax and is an integral part of Eve escaping, they have the fight scene too, where it's like, well, duh, she doesn't kill John Wick, but also there's this delicate balance of whether or not you show like John Wick being full John Wick. And in that fight, I'm like, nah, John Wick would have got her. Y'all sold me on her as a badass, but I don't believe that John Wick doesn't just shoot her ass. But once again, if your action is good enough, I'm willing to forgive a lot. I did forgive a lot in Ballerina. If I watched it for a second time, I'd probably be a little bit more critical of it. But just in terms of that first viewing experience with a packed audience who's engaged in the movie, you're probably not going to see too many better action movies than Ballerina this year. So I highly recommend it. Another action movie that came out this year that I think is underseen is The Amateur. I believe it might be on HBO Max now, but check that out if you haven't checked it out already. But to close us out, as I mentioned, I want to use these two movies as just a platform to talk a little bit about action movie and action movie going experience. And I came up with a list. Some of these are redundant, but these are the things that I'm looking for when it comes to a good action movie. And once again, let me know in the comments some action movies that you think fit a lot of these criteria. First one is cool shit. Can't be an action movie. Like, by definition, action movie gotta have cool shit. 2, I need interesting enough characters. Obviously, in a perfect movie, the characters are great. They're complex. I have a relationship with them. But even in action movies where you don't know a lot about the characters, if there is something interesting about them to where you at least remember their name and some characteristic about them, and the action's great, once again, we cool. That's all I need from you. Third one, I've never seen that before moments, something that's harder to achieve for some movies, but the best action movies, they nail those with like, man, like, even if I've seen something similar, it's not quite like this. And that's the key to a lot of great movies. It's something familiar but different. And when you show me something I haven't seen before, hey, you earn my applause. Next one, going along with cool shit, you gotta have an oh shit moment in there. You have to have an oh shit moment in there. You have to have something that makes you gasp, makes you shocked that they executed it, shocked that something happens. And it doesn't have to be this grand scale thing like you might see in a Mission Impossible movie, but just something where it's like, oh shit, like y'all did that on the screen. This next one is really key. It's your I wish I had a remote moments, which is more fitting for the theater going experience. But it's those moments in an action movie where you wish that you could just pull out a remote and rewind and be like, yo, what the fuck did I just see? And just run it back. Anything that you instantly want to run back, great action movie moment. kind of next level to the oh shit moment, you have your that's batshit crazy moments. That's Tom Cruise climbing over the biplanes. That's the grenade explosion behind the door. It's like, oh, there's y'all did this. It's stuff that's just like blowing your mind crazy, but it's like, man, I'm so happy I'm here to witness that. I'm happy I live in this timeline. And then last but not least, and most importantly, which I think is really when it comes down to whether or not I like an action movie, did you earn your non-action moments? Did you earn your exposition? Because let's face it, for a lot of summer blockbuster action movies, we're coming because we want to be exhilarated. We're coming because we want to see great action. But as much as we say we love good action, you can't really have a movie that's literally nonstop action. I'm sure there are examples of some where they're as close to nonstop action as possible, but at some point you have to give your audience a break. At some point you want to embed some time in your movie where if you're watching at home, you can pause, or if you're at the theater, you can run and take a quick bio break, go refill on snacks. You got to have some change to the pace of the movie to make it really captivating and impactful, because there are some bad action movies where part of the reason they're bad is because they focus too much on the action, and the action is not good enough to stand on its own. And you don't really earn those character moments. You don't earn the exposition. Those moments then become a little bit more corny, a little bit more cliche, and they take you out of the movie. And what you don't want is to be playing double dutch with your action movie. You want to be in, you want to be enjoying the time. You don't want to be waiting to go like, oh, do I like it? Do I not like it? And both of these movies have those moments where I felt like I was playing double dutch. The key differences are, with Ballerina, it was double dutch, but it was like, once I was in there, I was hitting that shit, and I can't double dutch, but it made me feel like I could double dutch. Whereas with Mission Impossible, there was those times where I'm like, you know what, stop the ropes. Like, I'm not jumping into that shit. Get to what I came to this movie for. But overall, let me know what you thought of this episode. Let me know in the comments what y'all thought about Ballerina, what you thought about Mission Impossible. Once again, leave a voice note, DM Banquet Hall Pod. Follow the pod on Instagram and wherever you're getting your podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review. Even if we're not reviewing 5-star movies, I need you to leave this as a 5-star podcast. But thank y'all as always for tuning into the Banquet Hall, tuning into the 4K Film Club, and we will catch y'all next movie. Let me know what movie we should cover next. Maybe something I'll start doing with these episodes is talk about movies I have reservations for, just to close out the episode and to reward listeners who tune in for the full thing. So currently in my reservation list, we have The Life of Chuck, Megan 2.0, Jurassic World Rebirth, and The Fantastic Four First Steps. Some movies I'm automatically going to be talking about, like I'm almost certainly going to talk about Superman and the Fantastic Four. But if there's something that's coming out that you want me to see, that you want me to talk about, something I'm already planning on seeing, or something that's a classic movie that you want to have an episode dedicated to, let me know. You can hit me up on the side. You can hit me up in the comments or on DMs. You can text me, call me, beat me. If you want to reach me, you can text me, DM me, leave a comment. You can send a carrier pigeon, whatever it does to get you, whatever you need to do to get the word out. But thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll catch y'all next time.